I'm actually going to be throwing some mug forms on the wheel. And again, we're going to be using the electric wheel here. You can use the kick wheel, the treadle wheel. We do actually have them, but I prefer the electric wheel. What we do is actually the wheel head gets spinning by using the pedal. Push the pedal down with your toe, makes the wheel head spin. Push with your heel to slow it down. You can throw directly on the wheel head here, but once you're finished with a piece, it's still very malleable, still very soft. And if you try to pick it straight up off the wheel head, you run the risk of warping the shape. So what we use are called bats, or little plates. These you can set on top of the wheel head, remove them when you're finished with a piece, and set them to the side and start another one. They come in all different shapes and sizes, just depending on what you're working on. Working on mug forms, usually do several of them at a time, so smaller bat takes up less room on the shelf. We've got these bat pins that go in, coordinate with the holes on the back of the bat, so that holds it in place and we're centered. This still has a little bit of clay from the last time I threw. I'm just going to take a little bit of water on the sponge and just clean it up a little bit. There we go. The moisture, not only it's cleaning all the clay off from before, all the dry stuff, but the moisture acts a little bit like glue that's going to help the clay stick on here. Over here I've got the clay that I've already measured out. Clay comes in a myriad of different materials, forms, firing temperatures. All clay vitrifies or turns solid at different temperatures. If you go out and dig clay from the creek bed, you have to do your own experimentation as to what the plasticity is, the workability, what the firing temperatures are, and kind of come up with that formula on your own. Whereas here, for our purposes, being a teaching facility, student facilities, I like to have the clay be consistent. When I know I order it, that's what I get. So we order our clay and it comes in predictable amounts, predictable workability. We know the shrinkage rate, the firing temperature. What we use here is a high fire clay. We actually fire to what's called a cone 6. So in the final firing temperature, it goes to just over 2,200 degrees. So that's what we get. The clay is all workable. It's moist clay in a bag. When I sit down to throw, if I know I'm going to be doing mugs, I'll go ahead and measure out and prep all the clay that I'm going to need at a time. These are about 1.5 pounds. I'm going to throw kind of larger size mugs. Again, keep that covered up so that it doesn't dry out while I'm working on this one. So again, working on the wheel, everything's going to start from this circle, spinning around. So the closer I can get this into a ball, into a circle, the better. I want to be sure that I get this down on the wheel head pretty good. Of course, if I don't smack it down there, it's not stuck, and I go to spin this wheel, it's going to go flying off to the side, and if you've got several people working, you'll really upset your neighbor if you do that. I'm going to get the wheel spinning pretty fast. The first step is actually to center it. I don't know if you can tell my hands bumping around on here a little bit. All of these little bumps, if I start to actually pull up the mug right now, pull up my vessel form, all of these little bumps or irregularities are going to follow me all the way up. So the first step when you're throwing is centering. I'm going to be sure to have plenty of water on my hands so that the clay slides through my hands. If my hands start to get dry, it's going to stick, and it's kind of like hitting a speed bump. It's going to bump along, and that will also throw it off center. So I'm going to have plenty of speed and make my hands nice and slippery. So a couple steps for centering the clay. We want to push on opposite sides with equal pressure to try to move it all into the center. So we use here, how I was taught, what I use is the coning method. So I'm going to take one hand on either side, squeeze together, and actually make the clay a little bit taller. This also not only gets the clay into the center, gets all the bumps out of it, it also starts to align all the particles in here, all the little platelets, so that you can have everything nice and compressed and try to avoid some cracking down the road. So now that I've brought the clay up into a cone, I'm going to mound it back down. I'm going to take my left hand on top, right hand on the outside, and I'm pushing down with the left and in with the right. So now I've worked some of those little bumps out, and there's still a little bit there, so I'm going to do that again. Squeezing it up, plenty of water on my hands. back down, got a little sticky. There we go. So now I've got a nice little mound. I've got it nice and centered, but I don't want a mound. I want a cup. So now I'm going to start my vessel. Using my finger to start the hole in the middle. I'm going to push down. Don't want to push down too far, otherwise I end up with a flower pot. I've got a hole in the bottom. But you want to go down to maybe about a half an inch, a quarter of an inch, so that you don't have too much weight on the bottom, too much heaviness on the bottom. So I'm going to pull it back out. So I've got it centered and I've got the hole started. So basically now I have a bowl, but you've got a little tiny bowl. You know, nobody wants a bowl that's tiny, very thick, short walls. So the next step is pulling. And what we're going to do with pulling is we're actually going to be moving this clay. We're going to be making the walls taller and thinner. Again, plenty of water on the hands. Lots of different methods. I always advise students, the basic principle you want is you want pressure on the outside and the inside even, and nice and slow moving up towards the top. But every hand is different, every body is different. You can use different fingers, use a thumb. So I always advise people to play with it. It's just clay, it's supposed to be fun, so you want to play with it. But you can see I've got one finger of my left hand on the inside, a finger on my right hand on the outside. I'm squeezing together. I'm pulling up. I'm going to compress on the top, just even it out, add a little bit more water. I'm going to start to slow down just a little bit. So again, pulling up, the walls are getting taller and thinner. Mainly I want to be going for pretty much a cylinder right now. I just want to be making the walls taller. I'll get to the shaping later. Again, squeezing the clay. As my walls get thinner, the piece itself becomes more fragile. And that's when you want to start slowing down just a little bit. And again, I'm just controlling that over here with my right foot. Increasing the height while thinning the walls, adding more water. Just bring it back in a little bit. Still got some clay in the bottom here. So pulling up. And again, I'm not moving up really quickly. Depending on the speed of the wheel head, depends on how quickly you're moving up the piece. Of course, it's not going to be a straight line. If you stay in one spot too long, you're going to end up with a thin spot. Again, that's a weak spot. So you basically want to move up. You want to have the wheel make one full circle before you move up. So it's kind of like moving instead of a spiral where if you move up too fast, you can see how you get all the indentations in there. That's kind of like a slinky that's pulled out. You want to think about coming up in spirals like a condensed slinky, like just moving up just a little bit at a time to a nice even wall. And let me slow down and get that out of there. You can see it's just smaller little spirals. There we go. So I've pretty much got a cylinder. If I were going to turn this into a mug, I'd want to start shaping it. So to give it a nice little belly, I'm going to push out with my left hand. Start to shape it. Again, when we talk about the shape of a vessel, it's kind of like the shape of the body. We have a foot down here. Got a nice little belly. We're going to bring out, and we can create a neck and a lip. So the lip is where the piece would come to your lips if you're drinking out of it, having your coffee out of it. Let me slow down a little bit more. The final step, once you have it shaped like you want, I'm going to take any moisture out of the inside, clean up the outside, and create a little groove on here where the clay meets the bat. And I'm going to stop the wheel, take this wire tool, and remove it, actually slide this between the bat and the clay. That removes the piece from the bat. This way, as it's drying, it's also shrinking. As it's doing that, it's removed from the piece. You're not going to have any cracking where it's still stuck to the bat. And so with that, I can pull this off of the wheel head, set the bat to the side, and then start another piece. What I would do with these is I would let this dry either until this afternoon or until the morning, depending on, again, the humidity, how quickly it's going to dry. If I set them out in the sun, I can dry them out a little bit faster. But then I would actually pick the piece up, like these over here, and I would put it back on the wheel and be able to shape the bottom of it. Trim the bottom of it, then add any handles or any other embellishment that you want at the time.